Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. This training today, this brief training, is going to be about your VISTA monthly activity logs. So, what are they? Why do we have to do them? And how do you do them? So, we just want to make sure that you have all the information you need, both contextually and just physically how to do them, to make sure that whenever you're filling them out, you're good to go, and hopefully we're able to answer any questions that you might have lingering prior to all of you filling out your activity log. Many of you will be doing it for the first time in the next couple of weeks, so we just want to make sure you have everything that you need. So first, just want to give you all a little bit of context. What are the activity logs, and why does everyone have to do them? So basically, on our end at Hunger Free America, we have to report on a bunch of metrics and other information to AmeriCorps about the program, all part of the grant, all like the usual stuff that we have to do just to make sure things are on track. They like to see what all the members are working on, and they go through us, since we are the intermediary, to make sure that we have all the metrics and we can give them any information that they need at any time. And so this is why we ask all of our VISTA members to please fill out an activity log every month so that we can track your progress on all of the great things that you are doing at your host sites. And it is mostly metrics based. You'll be typing in a lot of numbers in a few different categories, and we'll go through that process step by step. And you'll also have the opportunity to submit a number of narratives and talk, more verbally and through text, like how your year is going so far on a month-to-month basis. So with that, that's the context. So now we'll go over briefly how to fill out the activity logs. So whenever you click on that link, it'll take you here first. This is the opening page of the activity logs. And like I said, the link will be the same every month. So please feel free to bookmark it, and it should be good to go every time. So to start off, when are the activity logs due? So we ask you to please fill them out at the end of every month and no later than a week after the end of the month. So in other words, for your September activity logs that you're getting ready to complete, in the coming weeks, we ask you to please fill them out no later than October 7th, which of course is 1 week after the end of September. And so it's kind of like that all through the rest of the month, or all through all the 12 months of the year. So just please fill out the activity log within a week of a month ending. And so that's why we're having this training on September 23rd, so that a week from now, when you're starting to fill out your activity logs for September, you should be all ready to go for that. Next thing I just wanted to go over super briefly is right here at the top. You'll see a checkbox that says save my progress and resume later. So this is totally optional. If you want to fill out your activity log all at once, just knock it out of the park, all in one sitting, you can do that. You don't have to worry about this part. If you do think that you might want to start your activity log, pause it, come back to it later, you don't want to lose your progress. And so what you can do is you can create an account through the system, and then with your email and password, you can log back in and go back and resume if you do decide to stop your activity log in the middle of it and come back to it later. So just so you know, you have that option available to you. Yes, I see, Andrew, you raised your hand.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, if I decide to like save my progress and resume later, that email, is it just like my personal email or is it like the work email specifically, or does it really matter?
That doesn't matter. That's totally whatever information you want to put in.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Absolutely. Awesome. So now, diving into the meat and potatoes of the activity logs here. So this is all the information that you'll be inputting, and then we'll be collecting on our end for all of our reporting metrics. So to kick us off, you'll of course be selecting which month you're reporting on. So we'll use September as an example, since this is the one that you'll be filling out soon. Here, legal first name, last name, all that good stuff. And then next we have the AmeriCorps ID number, aka your NSP ID. So this number, if you don't have it handy, it's on your My AmeriCorps portal. So you just go to your My AmeriCorps portal right there on the top with your name and contact information. Right there will be your ID number. We'll just type that in here, and we just need that for tracking purposes. It's a little bit easier than going by first and last name. We use the ID number just to make sure all of your logs stay attached to the correct person. So just for some context there, I'll just throw in some random numbers here as an example. And then here, just please type in your work email address. And I believe there's a check. So if you were to type it in incorrectly, like if the email wasn't formatted properly, I think it would stop you. So you would know, like if you forgot the .org at the end, it would stop you, I believe. Type that in. And then next we need you to select which VAD category you have. And I know your VADs are very broad. There's a lot of information in them, but we do have them within one of three categories, that being capacity building, outreach and education, and volunteer coordinator. So whichever VAD you have, please just select whichever one it is. And again, that's just for tracking and record keeping purposes. Next, we have the host site name. All of your host sites, both new and returning, are all listed here. So you would just simply click from the drop-down menu which host site you are serving at. And then here, this next box would be your host site supervisor's email. So for this, and as well as your VISTA leader's email, this is for your activity logs are automatically sent to both your supervisor and your VISTA leader. So that way, there's no having to track it down. Everyone just receives everything automatically. So for that reason, we ask you to please make sure that the emails that you type in here are correct, that it's the correct email for your supervisor and the correct email for your VISTA leader. And so you would type in your supervisor's email here. And then for your VISTA leader's email, we make that easy. Whichever cohort you're in, you would just take their email from here and just copy and paste it right into that box. And like I said, everything is automatically sent to all the people that need to see it. So that way it's easier on everyone on tracking down information that we need. Okay, so that's just the basic, the contact info, all that good stuff. And we will go on to the next page. Sure.
There's a question in chat from Abby. She asks, when's the earliest you can submit your activity log? Like since it's due October 7th, can she submit it October 1st? And do you need to wait until the whole month ends, essentially?
Great question. So definitely October 1st, you can absolutely submit it. When the month ends, definitely feel free to submit it at any time within that first week. In terms of submitting before the end of the month, if you believe that you've completed all the projects that you're going to complete for that month, and therefore, like say the metrics that you're typing in should be all the same, whether it be the 25th or the 30th, if you think everything's going to be the same, you can absolutely feel free to submit it early. And especially also like if you're taking time off, you're going to be away the last few days in the month, certainly feel free to submit your activity log a couple days early. That is totally fine with us. Any other questions before I move on? All right. So then you go to the next page. And so this next page here, it gives you a little bit of instructions. And so I'm going to talk through with you on some of the instructions that we have, but it's also written down here on this next page so that you're able to see all that. So basically, the long and the short of it is that obviously not every metric that we ask for, you individually are necessarily working on. It certainly depends on your VAD, what type of work you're doing. So if you're, education and outreach coordinator, VISTA, and you don't really work with volunteers, you're not going to be able to really answer the volunteer questions, like how many volunteers did I recruit? I didn't do that. That's not part of my VAD. And so this is where we talk about the difference between NA versus 0. So if you're asked a question about something that you just don't work on, it's not a part of your VAD, it's not something you track, it's just not, within your realm. In that instance, you would type in NA. So that way we know it's not a part of your realm. You don't have to worry about tracking that metric. That's as opposed to the number 0. If you have something that it is a part of your VAD, it is a part of your realm, but just that particular month, that just happened to be 0 for whatever reason, you would type in 0. And the difference there is that we know, okay, there's an actual number there, that even if it's 0, we know that it's a part of your VAD. So that way, for our internal purposes, we know what you're working on versus what you're not working on. So I hope that makes sense. And like I said, this is all written here, so you're able to see it whenever you need to. And like it says here, anytime you have any questions about completing the form or tracking metrics or anything like that, your VISTA leaders are there for support. Please reach out to them at any time, and they'll be happy to help you figure out what you should be typing in on your activity logs before they're due. And so on this page, the only thing you have to do is just check off which type of activities that you did in that respective month. And some of you, it'll be just one box. Some of you, it might be all 4 boxes. Whatever the case may be, just whatever you worked on or think that you worked on, just go ahead and click on whichever one's here, and then you can move on from there. And then I'll hit the next page, and I'll pause again briefly. Any questions in chat, Robert? Okay, perfect. So now this is really where a lot of the information starts to come together. It's like these next couple of pages where you're starting to get into specific metrics of what you need to type in. So this first page, it starts off with the volunteer recruitment and management. And I'm not going to go through, every single question individually. All the questions will be here, but I'll just say very generally, these are the type of questions that, like I said earlier, we're just got to track the different metrics for AmeriCorps for reporting purposes. All the various stakeholders that we have and you have on your site. This is kind of where all that kind of comes together. And so that's why we really want to make sure that we try to collect all this information from you as best that we can. And so one big question that I know many of you might have is, okay, this sounds great, but how do I get this information? Where am I getting these metrics from, right? So this is where we would ask you to really work with your supervisor and iron out like, okay, I need to track how many volunteers I recruited this month, and I need to track how many hours those volunteers served. And so how do I track that information? So work with your supervisor and let them know like, hey, this is what I need to track for my activity logs. So work with them to try to get that information from them and work through so that when you have to fill out the logs, you're able to type in those numbers step by step and are able to do that. And now another question that someone might have is, I'm working with another Vista at my site and we're working on a lot of the same things. How do we separate what I'm working on versus what my co-Vista is working on at the same site? That's another great question that comes up a lot. So if you and a co-Vista are working on the exact same thing, like you're reaching out to volunteers together to recruit them, and you have a pool of volunteers that you've both collected together, what we would ask you to do is just take whatever the number is and cut it in half. And that's what you would type into this box. How many volunteers did you both recruit? Let's say you got 20 volunteers this month together. Between the two of you, you would type in 10 each into this box. And so that way, all of the numbers add up properly. Things are not double counted. And so that way, we're able to get accurate numbers and metrics all the way across the board. So I'll pause again. I think we probably have some questions in chat, right, Robert?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
one from Ray. She says, I'm a volunteer coordinator, but a big part of my job right now is signing up for tabling events, helping share resources and offer information, contacting pantries in need, etc. I wasn't sure if I should also click for outreach and education or development at all. And then attached to that question, as you might be reading, maybe capacity building. So she's been doing putting on a lot of different hats, and like what, can you clarify what would make sense for her with all those tasks?
Absolutely. Yes. So definitely feel free to check off more of those boxes as you are thinking about all the different things that you are doing. If you're ever like on the fence, like you're not 100% sure, like, hey, does this count as outreach? Does this count as capacity building? Feel free to just check them all off. I think that particular section, like that second page where you check off everything, that's not necessarily as hypercritical in terms of like reporting purposes. So if you think that you worked on something, even if you're on the fence, feel free to check it off, and then we'll just kind of go from there. And then if you ever need any like further clarification about like some very specific scenario, that's where you would reach out to your Vista leader and ask, hey, I did X, Y, and Z. How should I report that? And then we'll try to help you through it that way. I hope that helps. Okay. Any other questions before I move forward? Okay, great. So like I said, this first page, this is the volunteer recruitment and management page. So volunteer recruitment, how many skills-based volunteers did they serve? How many hours did they serve? How many people did you recruit? And then volunteer trainings, how many volunteer trainings did you facilitate, and how many hours did you facilitate those trainings. So these are just some of those specific questions that AmeriCorps asks us that the VISTA members need to track. And so this is why we asked these questions. Like I said, if any question doesn't make sense, if you're not sure exactly what it's looking for, reach out to your VISTA leaders. And if the VISTA leaders need assistance with that, they're always welcome to reach out to me so that I can help kind of steer everyone straight and making sure you're putting in the right information for everyone. And so, and one thing I will mention is that all the questions are required. You will have to type something into the box or else it won't let you progress. So that's why for the purposes of this exercise, I'll just type in some numbers here. And also, yes, I almost forgot, sometimes some of the boxes, when you click into them, it'll give you an example of what the question is specifically looking for. So like, for example, this managed skills-based volunteers, how many hours did skills-based volunteers serve? It gives you an example showing that if 10 volunteers work 3 hours, enter the total number 10 times 3, which is 30 hours. Right. So a lot of these questions will give you some like specific hints on like, okay, this is what we're looking for exactly. And so if you're ever unsure, just simply click into the box and it'll be able to help you try to figure out like what's going on there.
There's a quick question in the chat.
Sure.
If you do not recruit any volunteers, as it's not part of your VAD, do you put NA or 0?
Yes, great question. So if it's not a part of your VAD, it's just not a part of your work purview whatsoever, you would type in NA here. So that would be the big thing. So if it's, like I said, if it's not a part of your work, NA. If it is a part of your work, but it happens to be 0, then you type in 0. So that's like the big difference. That's the only distinction that we would have. And I hope that that makes sense. Another thing I would say is sometimes like you'll see this, how many hours did volunteers serve? You might put something like 20 plus, right? Or you might put in approximately 20, or you might put in 10 to 20. We would ask you to not do that because that would mess with the system or a little bit internally. For these boxes, we really want you to type in just numbers. So no letters, no special characters, just numbers in these boxes, excluding if it is NA. If it's NA, that's fine. If you do have a number, please type in just the number, no other characters, so that way everything is added up properly in our system. And if you have a situation where you're not exactly sure, it's 10 to 20, but I don't know which number it is exactly, you can either say the high number, you can say 20, or you can split the difference at 15. And again, anytime you have maybe a question about that, reach out to your VISTA leader, reach out to me, and we can help try to clarify with the information that you have. So I hope that that makes sense as well. And so with this, I'll just move on to the next page and just show you what the outreach and education page looks like for those of you that this would apply for. How many meetings did you attend? How many outreach materials did you distribute? How many individuals access this information? And so on from there. So again, a lot of information that you might not necessarily have offhand, right? But it's something that we would ask you to work with your supervisor, like how to get this information, where to find it, and so that way you're able to type it in and report it for us. And one thing I will say is that we can give you, if you want, if you need it, I can give you like a PDF version of the entire activity log, like all the different pages, like in one sheet. So that way you and your supervisor can share that and look at that together. So that way you can circle which things you need to track. And that way your supervisor knows what information you might need help collecting. Because this isn't, all on your shoulders. We know that you're not just going to have all these numbers just on your computer at a moment's notice. We know that you have to track down this information. And so that way, knowing in advance what type of questions you're being asked and working with your supervisor on that, that would definitely be a big help to make sure that you're able to get all the information that you need. Okay, and same thing, I'll just type in zeros here for now, so that way we can just move forward on the pages. Any questions in chat, Robert, before I keep going?
Yeah, we have a question. Do tabling events count as meetings, or what exactly qualifies as a community meeting?
Yes, great question. So yes, tabling events, that absolutely counts. Basically, anytime that you're, out in the world, for lack of a better term, whether it's tabling, distributing materials, anything that you're doing both physically and also virtually, through emails, through events like this, anytime that you're distributing anything, newsletters, pamphlets, social media, videos, anything of that nature, that counts as an event for the purposes of this. Yes. Okay, so the next page is just talking about development and fundraising, asking how many grants did you help apply for, how many grants were approved, the dollar value of those grants, how many special events and fundraisers that you helped support, and also the dollar amount of in-kind donations. And so this last question I'll pause a brief bit on because I know a lot of people sometimes have questions about donations and monetary donations, in-kind donations, etc. And so what amount do you type in here? So monetary donations, that's easy. Whatever the amount is, that's the number you type in. In terms of in-kind donations, such as if somebody donated a bag of clothes, if somebody donated a box of books, anything of that nature, what is the approximate value of that? So this is where we ask you, and again, with the help of your supervisor, the help of your VISTA leader, just trying to use your best judgment on approximately how much value does that bag of clothes have or that box of books have, and so on from there. And just doing your best to type that in to the best of your ability, the best of your knowledge to put that in there. We're not asking for, you to go dollars and cents, go through every single book, every single clothing item. How much is this worth? How much is this worth? We know that that would be unreasonable. We're not expecting that at all. We're just asking for the best of you can, the approximate value of whatever goods that someone donated that you helped procure through your VISTA work. And that's where we would ask you to type that number in there. And again, working with your supervisor, how much stuff came in, how much stuff was a direct result of my work as a VISTA. This is what I would be typing in here. So I hope that that makes sense. Again, I'll pause for a quick second if anyone has any questions about that. Okay. Moving on to the next one. Then just a couple quick capacity building questions. How many activities conducted to help build organizational capacity, whether that be working on a database, working on some social media stuff. This capacity building is obviously a much more broad category. So anytime you do any sort of activity to help build your organization's capacity through all of the great behind the scenes work that you're doing, this is where you would type in how many times that you do that, and how many programs that were created and updated to help address anti-poverty issues. And so again, this could be databases, social media, anything that you're doing internally to help your organization, your colleagues do their job better to get out there to the world and just build the capacity of your organization as a whole. This is where you would track a couple of those things here. And then we're on to our, I believe, page 6 or 7 and the final page. And so this last page is text-based. No more metrics, no more numbers. This is where we want you to share a couple stories, a couple narratives to really help us give us a more personalized look at what your month of service looked like for that previous month. And so the first big question is, please share your greatest successes during this reporting period. And so this is where a lot of our visitors really shine in the narrative section where, you type in the numbers, you type in all the metrics, and they all sound great, but there's no context to them because they're just numbers. This is where you can provide a lot more context to all the different metrics that you're providing. And in addition to that, you can provide stories, provide information that the metrics doesn't cover, just other things that you want to chat about, anything that you want to share with us, the big successes that you've had during that month. And this is stuff that AmeriCorps loves to see as well. Obviously they have to check a bunch of boxes with the metrics and whatnot, but they want to see all the great things that you're doing. And the best way to do that is through this narrative period. So definitely feel free to share as much as you want. It's absolutely open-ended. You can share 3 sentences, you can share 3 paragraphs. Either which way, you can type in all the information that you want here. And this is where we really want all of you to really just brag about what you're doing. I know a lot of people, myself included, we're shy, we're reserved. People give us a compliment like, oh, okay, thank you. This is where we want you to brag on yourselves as much as you possibly can. Like, really tell your story. Like, don't be afraid to share every little detail. Give us all the information, everything that you did that you want to brag about. If you accomplished X, Y, and Z, please tell us all about X, Y, and Z. We really, really want to hear all the great things that you guys are doing. And so this is where you would type that in, this big giant box, great successes. So this is where you would put all that in. The next paragraph here is please share any challenges that you encountered during this reporting period. So similarly, if something didn't go as well as you wanted, if there was a challenge, a concern, anything that popped up, write it in here. If you're concerned that maybe, hey, like this one metric, it was 0 and I'm worried that it's 0 and I don't like that it's 0, talk about it in this paragraph. Like say like, hey, this is what happened. We weren't able to recruit as many volunteers as we wanted, for example. Anything that you want to talk about here, challenges, put it in there. And then if there's any challenges that are of a particular concern, anything that is worth addressing, this is where your VISTA leader would step in and say like, hey, I noticed that in the challenges section you mentioned X, Y, and Z. Do you want to chat about that? You want to talk about that? And that's where like we can help step in. So you're not typing it just to type it. We have people on our end who are able to step in and assist if there's ever a situation where that would be warranted. And then just quickly, I'll mention the last section here is please share any topics for trainings or forms of support that HFA can provide that help set you up on success or address a challenge. So this is basically where we're always looking for new ideas on different trainings to run, different communication to put together. If you have any ideas of trainings that are not already provided that you would like to be a part of, this is where we ask you to, give us some suggestions. If you have anything that you want help with, anything that you think would be a good idea for all your VISTAs to learn and work on together, put that in this box. And this is where you'll be able to share, anything that you would like to see trained on, anything you'd like to see worked on, anything like that. And so that is the end of the activity log. From here, when you're finished, you would just hit the submit button. And like I mentioned earlier, your supervisor and also your VISTA leader will automatically receive a copy to their email. And then that would be it. And so whenever you submit your activity log, I also see it on my end. I track it. We'll do everything we have to do on our end to make sure all your metrics and your narratives are shared with AmeriCorps. And then we just go from there. And then, like I said, you do this every month. As the name suggests, monthly activity log. We ask you to please do this at the end of every month for your entire 12 months of service.